Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to See You at USC on Friday night. My name is Dan Toomey, and joining me this evening is USC student Zachary Wright. It's going to be a great interview. You're not going to want to miss it. Don't go anywhere. And welcome back to See You at USC on Friday night. Once again, my name is Dan Toomey, and joining me is Mr. Zachary Wright. Zachary, thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
So now, for the folks at home who may not be familiar with you just yet, if you could provide a brief background intro about yourself, where you're from, what's your major here at USC?
For sure. So yeah, I'm a USC student. I was born in Huntington Beach, California. When I was 7, I moved to Cypress, Texas. I know, big change. Unfortunately, my dad had a job transfer, so that we had to make the unfortunate trip to Texas. Sorry to all the Texans out there.
Coming out of the gate against Texas.
It was good. It was all right. Very hot all the time. I met some pretty cool people too. But yeah, I always knew I wanted to come back to California. It's always going to be my home. So kind of, I ended up at USC. Couldn't be happier. And yeah, now I'm here. I'm ready to kill it.
Yeah. And so I guess something that, so your desire to come back to California was so strong. Was it? But you moved at a pretty young age. Now, like, I just want to hear more about what was it about Texas specifically that made you want to come back to California so much?
I think it wasn't about Texas. It's just more about California and how I just identified more with the Californian culture. I was, I grew up 10 minutes away from the beach. I loved the beach. Oh, it was very much the story of, like, we went there every weekend, had picnics on the beach. My brother would surf. I would just, I would make sandcastles, that kind of thing. So I just love California so much. I mean, and Texas, it's a great state. It's cheap, which is something California can't say.
Exactly, yes.
So, but they're much more into the traditional, like, hunting, fishing, camping. Totally cool. Just not for me.
Sure.
Also, again, super hot, and then you can't really beat the climate in California except for the rain that is
right now. It's
killing
terrible.
us right now.
It's so bad.
Really
now,
bad.
Now, for somebody who has spent a lot of time in California, me personally, I'm from Massachusetts. I wouldn't know. Is this rain common or?
So we pretty much have our monsoon season. So
really?
We have the seasons where most of the year is hot as hot.
Yeah.
Hot as hot.
Yeah.
But I think it tends to be early spring. It is monsoon season. No. I'm sorry. Early fall.
Oh,
because that's hurricane season. And so anytime there's hurricane season, we just get, killed with rainstorm. Last year, Houston got flooded, like completely flooded, destroyed Houston.
Yeah.
And so it's this really weird, like, dichotomy between really hot or just, like, crazy rain.
Because what I was going to say, because there's the drought that's been going on.
Right.
But this is a yearly thing, though?
Yeah. I remember for pretty much every year I lived in Texas, there was some kind of terrible rainstorm that, just flooded our neighborhood. Like, I lived in the Houston area, so I don't know for people up in, Dallas, Austin.
Sure.
They probably escaped that. But Houston, it's pretty routine for us to get destroyed by rain.
Yeah. And now, so you were a student at Houston all through high school, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Cypress, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And something I'm interested in today across USC, a lot of tours were happening. This is usually the time where kids start touring colleges,
absolutely,
making their decisions. And I guess something I'm interested in is what kind of steps you took in high school to get here,
right?
I guess for those students who may be touring or like applying to colleges.
No, it requires a lot of steps because USC is a really prestigious school. I mean, you can't beat the programs here, especially if you're looking to go into comm, if you're looking to go into cinema, if you're looking to go into business. It's like, you know, USC is the place to be. So, you know, it's kind of basically what everyone I think did. It's, you know, kill the SAT or the ACT. You know, take as many APs as you can. You know, write some great essays. You know, spend the time, go to all your teachers and ask them to proofread it, because that's what it takes. It takes a lot of, you know, effort to get into USC because we're such a great school. So yeah, I also, you know, go to the campus tours. Make sure USC is, you know, the campus for you, because as great as it is, you know, it's not the place for everyone, which is totally completely fine. But yeah, just do all of that. Kind of keep up with USC, you know, news. Just to, you know, there's sometimes students are called in for interviews. So you want to know what's, you know, happening on USC. You know, keep up with the current situation in the world. But yeah, it's pretty. I think I did what, you know, a lot of the students here who get accepted did. And it, you know, it seems to work out.
And so, just kind of going off this timeline now. So you get into USC and you're here for your first time as a freshman. This is your second year, correct?
Yeah, I'm a sophomore.
So your first week as a freshman, what was that? I mean, because it's such a memorable experience for everybody. I'm curious as to what yours was like specifically.
Or lack of memory, if you know what I mean. No, it's yeah, first week at USC, you say goodbye to your parents. You know, for the moment, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I am alone. I'm independent. This is the best feeling ever. You know, 5 minutes later, like, oh my God, my parents aren't here. This is so sad. I'm like about to cry. But you know, it's great because like you're put in a situation where, you know, at least for me, I was completely alone. No one. I mean, one other girl from my high school came to USC with me, but we didn't really know each other. So you're basically put in a situation where, you know, you have to like go out of your comfort zone. You have to meet people. You have to just, you know, talk to new people. And it was weird for me because, you know, you in high school you have friends for 4 years. You're so comfortable. You kind of know everyone. But for this week, it's just like, okay, talk to as many people as you can. Just go out, be the most extroverted self you can be. And so that's what I had to do. I went to all the like welcome week events or whatever. I tried to meet people. It was a lot and it was fun. But yeah, I'm kind of glad to be comfortable again. I've made my friends, so.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask, what has been different in your sophomore year now? You've been here a full year. What's different between sophomore Zach and freshman Zach, I guess?
Sophomore Zach is a little bit more knowledgeable about USC. So freshman Zach was kind of stumbling around. Was like, I don't know anything. I'm so confused.
I mean, as the best of them are.
Right. You know, if there's 50,000 people here, I don't know anyone. Classes are kind of harder. Like it's like everything was hitting me like a, you know, storm. But I mean, sophomore Zach knows a little bit more about like, okay, if you're in the situation, do this. If you know, if you meet these kind of people, do this. You know, I've learned a lot. I mean, I've learned a lot also from going into kind of like different kind of orgs and clubs, because, you know, you get that, you know, mentorship from like upperclassmen. So
that's
super helpful.
And I guess if you had advice to pass on to any upcoming students at USC, they've already gotten the acceptance letter and they're ready to come. What are you telling them before they first make it down here?
I would say USC has a myriad of student orgs. Start looking, because it's an amazing way to meet people. It's an amazing way to, you know, get mentorship from the upperclassmen. It's just an amazing way to get involved, to like pursue things you're interested in. So start looking now, because what is there, like 500 plus clubs on campus?
It's ridiculous.
It's really ridiculous, but it's amazing at the same time, because there's a club for literally anything you could ever want. So, you know, start looking, because like you don't want to just go to class. You want to do things. You want to add things to your resume. You know what I mean? So it's a great way.
And did you know about that coming in, or was that something you had to learn on your own?
I didn't, because my first semester freshman year, I didn't do anything. I was just I went to the involvement fair, but I was overwhelmed. There's so many things.
Well, it is, because they have all the tents set up and everything.
And it's like,
and the
do
flyers.
I want to be an anime club? Like I've never watched anime. I don't. Do I? It's
but they tell me I want to.
Yeah, it's like I want to, I guess. And so you just, you know, you come out of involvement fair with like a stack of like pamphlets and papers, and you're like, I didn't know I wanted to do all this stuff. And so I just got overwhelmed and I didn't do anything. And then I had a senior friend who told me about like one of the orgs I'm in, and I was like, this sounds perfect. It's a leadership fraternity on campus called Delta Omicron Zeta. It was an amazing way to like kind of helped me become more confident, pursue my own unique leadership style. So that's kind of what I've been really involved in.
Yeah, and something I would love to talk more about, because I also had a senior friend when I first came here, is, I mean, that the importance of having somebody like that to take you under your wing.
Absolutely.
I mean, would you agree in saying that it would have been completely different without that person?
Absolutely, because if I didn't have him, I probably wouldn't have stumbled upon DOZ. And if I hadn't stumbled upon DOZ, I don't know where I would be right now. I mean, the reason I'm in all my other orgs is through people I've met in DOZ. I mean, I also work at Trojan Vision. I found that through Catherine Kropp. I mean, I'm in another thing, Trojan Marketing Group, and I found that through Jade Shi. Like, you don't know these people, but like they're people in my organization, and so it's crazy because it's really, I would really attribute this organization to kind of like spurring my real college career. So I owe it everything.
And that has to be something that I think is, at least in my personal experience, has been so vital at USC. Is developing not like your own group of connections very quickly.
For sure. I mean, USC, I've never been amongst such a smart, diverse group of people. So, I mean, of course, make friends, but it's a great way to network. Like,
exactly.
You know, everyone here has a connection to something, whether it just be like a dad who happens to work at your friend's interested industry. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have had friends who've had gotten real internships through their friends, not like applying online or anything. Like, it's a great way to network. Keep in touch, meet as many people as you can, because one thing that I've learned through one of my classes is like your network is anyone who knows you by your name. Like, you don't have to be best friends with anyone. Like, if they know you, that you can network with them. So it's amazing.
Exactly. And I think something also interesting that we touched upon earlier was in regards to the whole mentorship thing. Have you found yourself now being the mentor for any upcoming freshmen? Or?
So although I'm like only a sophomore, we have like freshman pledging right now, and it's a really cool process to kind of like see the cycle between becoming a mentee to becoming a mentor. And I'm still getting mentored through like older classmen, but like I'd love to like help out any freshman.
And sorry if you don't mind my asking, pledging for
Delta Omicron Zeta.
Okay, and would you mind just quickly explaining what that is for?
Yeah. So Delta Omicron Zeta is USC's premier leadership fraternity, and what we try to do is foster everyone's unique leadership style, because we believe that anyone can be a leader. It's just if you pursue that. And so not only that, we kind of pursue like a more introspective kind of way of thinking. So trying to get to know yourself more, because we think that if you know yourself, you can become a better leader. If you know how to be empathetic and how to connect with other people, you can become a better leader. So we try to tackle different ways of thinking through this, through the journey. So our pledging process is called the journeyman semester. And so during the semester, we try to do that so that people can ultimately leave that process becoming like a new leader, a leader they didn't think they could be.
And you said that you guys like to attack new ways of thinking.
Right.
Would you mind just explaining upon that further? Like what specifically new ways of thinking?
So I think one of the main ways that's kind of the new way thinking is kind of really thinking how other people think, because I feel like sometimes there's this stigma that if you're a leader, it's kind of like your way or the highway. And I definitely don't think that like the best leaders in the world necessarily thought that way. They really kind of listened to whatever, like who they were leading.
It's about working with a group.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think one of the things I've realized as through this semester is that as a leader, you're not the best at anything or like everything. It's kind of impossible to be the best at everything. So you really should take the strengths of all the people you're working with and kind of utilize that to your advantage. And so I think being a leader is more about like delegating who should do what based on like what they're good at. Like, everyone has a strength, and so why not use that? And so taking that, stepping back and realizing like, hey, I have some fantastic people I'm working with. Yeah. Let's use that. So that's,
is that a big pillar of what you guys do, is group thinking?
Absolutely.
That's funny, because I feel like people might have the misconception that, this is a leadership group. It's going to be a bunch of chiefs and
No, absolutely. Leadership, collaboration, teamwork, all go together. Absolutely. Most of our tasks we give our journeymen, so that's the equivalent to the pledges.
And what would an example of a task be, I guess?
So one of the examples of our tasks is they have to go to a secret location. So for our semester it was Yosemite in 24 hours, and we
And welcome back to See You at USC on Friday night. Once again, my name is Dan Toomey. Except we have a different guest on the couch. Zach had to leave, and now we have Miss Elyn Sacs here for us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
now,
Dan. It's really nice to be here.
A brief introduction, if I can summarize all that you've done. You are a MacArthur Genius Scholar. You are a professor here at USC. You are a published author. You have graduated from Vanderbilt, Oxford, Yale. The list goes on and on. You have a TED Talk about psychoanalysis. And I could spend the rest of the episode talking about what you've done, but I would love to hear more from your perspective. And I think you've talked about how in your work, people have a giant misconception about mental illness. And I would love to just hear a brief intro on what you believe that misconception is.
So I believe people have misconceptions about mental illness, the biggest one being that people with mental health disorders are dangerous, that they're violent, whereas the reality is they account for a very small proportion of violence in the world. Also, there's a misconception that people with mental health disorders can't lead full and productive lives, can't really work, don't really have families, you know, that kind of thing, and that's not true either. I was diagnosed with schizophrenia in the late 70s and early 80s. I was given a, quote, grave prognosis. So I was expected to be unable to live independently, let alone to work, and that's not my life, right? I'm a chaired professor, I have wonderful friends, I have an amazing husband, I just have a really, really great life. Sometimes people say I'm unique, that there aren't other people like schizophrenia like me, but I'm actually doing a study with some folks at UCLA, including Steve Martyr, about high-functioning schizophrenia. We've got 2 MDs, two JDs, a PhD candidate, full-time teacher, CEO of not-for-profits. There are other people out there like me, but the stigma's so great that they don't come forward.
And so I guess for people who might not know exactly what the conditions are of schizophrenia, would you mind just elaborating upon what it is exactly?
Sure. So it's considered a thought disorder, and it involves positive symptoms. They're called positive symptoms like delusions and hallucinations. So I often have the delusion that I've killed hundreds of thousands of people with my thoughts. Really? Hallucinations, a guy who's standing with a raised knife. Disorganized, incoherent speech. So I'm on the roof of the Yale Law School having a breakdown, and I say to my colleagues, to my classmates, are you having the same experience of words jumping around the pages as I am? Someone's infiltrated my copies of the cases. We've got a case to joint. I don't believe in joints, but they hold your body together. So words that are loosely associated with each other but don't really make sense. A lot of people with schizophrenia have something called negative symptoms as well, like apathy, withdrawal, inability to work, inability to make relationships, and a lot of the burden of schizophrenia resides in the negative symptoms. And except for the first 2 years I was ill, I've been blessedly spared those negative symptoms. But if I could actually analogize a psychotic episode to anything, it would be to a waking nightmare. Only with a nightmare, you sit up, open your eyes, and it goes away, and no such luck with schizophrenia.
Really? And I think one of the most interesting, because I saw your TED Talk.
Did you?
And absolutely fascinating. And I think one of the most interesting parts is you say the 3 reasons, because you said you received a grave diagnosis.
Grave prognosis, yeah.
And one of the 3 reasons why you cited you've overcame that was because you've had supportive friends and family.
Absolutely.
And I think something that's so interesting is, what do you think it is about human nature, or from a psychoanalytical perspective, about having that kind of companionship that can help you pull through that situation?
Well, I just think relations are just so essential to mental health and mental well-being.
Really?
I mean, they give your life a richness and a depth and a pleasure and another set of eyes observing what's going on, not only for mentally ill people, but for people who, you know, tend to get stressed if they don't watch it, and their spouse or their partner can say, you know, Elyn, it's going to be okay. Calm down. You know, and it's the same with schizophrenia. So relationships give a meaning and depth to your life, and again also serve as another set of eyes, kind of observing what's going on.
And one of those supportive environments that you have received, or at least you've said, is the USC Gould School of Law. And would you mind just describing your work there for the folks at home?
Sure. I'm Orrin B. Evans Professor of Law, Psychiatry, and Psychology in the Behavioral Sciences. Sorry, Psychology and Psychiatry in the Behavioral Sciences. And I'm an Adjunct Professor of Psychiatry at UCSD Medical School, and on the faculty of the new Center for Psychoanalysis. And my area is mental health law, which I know from all sides of the medication counter. So mental health law includes civil commitment, right to treatment, right to refuse treatment, confidentiality. That's civil mental health law, which I teach. There's also criminal mental health law, which is insanity defense, competence to stand trial, competency to be executed, and those kinds of things. So my teaching is in an area that I know about from firsthand experience. Mostly these days, the school is very generous to me. I supervise students doing papers and don't actually do classroom teaching.
And so you published your memoir back in 2007, New York Times bestseller, and since then, have you seen much? Because I think one of your, not necessarily largest criticisms, but you do address that there are changes that need to be made in how people with mental health issues are treated in America. And have you seen any change since that time period? I mean, it's been a decade since, so I'm just curious.
In some ways, I think things have gotten better. First of all, there's more understanding of mental illness and more openness about it, and more TV shows have someone who has a mental health disorder on it and stuff like that, which can kind of normalize it and destigmatize it in many ways. So the media attention. People say the best way to reduce stigma is not people seeing mental health disorders as brain disorders, but people coming forth and telling their stories. So to the extent that people can safely and comfortably do it, coming out and telling your story, helps other people. Stigma's so awful because it deters people from getting care, and you shouldn't have to suffer, but you will if you don't get care.
Yeah.
And I think things are getting better. They're still, problematic. I mean, I affiliate law, psychology, psychiatry, social work, philosophy, neuroscience in my institute in teaching. And the law students, they're usually 6 or 7, write something to get into the class. And I would say 85% of them either have a mental health disorder or have someone close to them who does. But when I go around the room the first day of class, in 6 years of teaching, I only had one person who self-disclosed. So even in this day and age, even in this forum, mental health law.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, isn't that? On the other hand, I get a lot of kids say, I want to apply to law school. What do I do about my illness? And I sort of give the pros and cons. The reality is you probably shouldn't say it unless you have to explain gaps in your resume. But a lot of the kids are like, this is who I am. It's part of who I am. It's me. I'm not gonna hide it. So, and I think that's really cool. And I think that's changed. To some extent.
And because I was going to say, you publicly came out with your mental health issue much later in life.
I was already tenured professor.
Yeah, and I mean, I would love to hear more about that decision. Do you think it would be different now, after
being a risk-averse person? I probably would have waited anyway, but it probably would have been different.
Yeah.
But I probably would have waited. Just.
And do you think where does the stigma, I guess, come from?
It's a really good question. People often kind of identify in a certain way and create out groups or marginalize people at the margins. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, people, unlike say with developmental disability, feel like maybe the person's to blame, that if they tried harder or if they were a better person or if they listened to their family, or they would be okay. People also might unconsciously feel responsible themselves, even though mental health is a no-fault brain disease. They may feel responsible, and that makes them angry and push people away.
That's interesting.
And then I think there's a kind of unconscious fear of contagion. Could I catch this? Not most people in their realistic state of mind would say, well, of course you can't catch mental illness, but I think unconsciously a lot of people are afraid of that.
Sure.
So.
And I mean, did you feel a lot of that stigma yourself growing up? I mean, were there any like?
Yeah.
Really?
Sort of interesting because Glenn Close, the actress, her sister's bipolar and her nephew's schizoaffective, and she did a public service announcement with people walking around Grand Central Station with t-shirts that say schizophrenia, a sister of someone with schizophrenia, bipolar. She gave me a t-shirt that said schizophrenia, and my first thought was, I don't wear t-shirts to work during the week, and then I thought, but I do wear them on weekends. And then I thought, do I really want to wear a t-shirt that identifies me as having mental illness, schizophrenia?
Yeah.
And then I thought, I've had cancer too, and people wear armbands and pins and t-shirts with solidarity and pride and without shame. And that's the way it should be with schizophrenia, but we're not there. And I've sort of internalized some of that stigma as well.
And do you think we're on a path to being there in the future?
I think things are getting better.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Maybe that's wishful thinking, but I feel like things are getting better.
No, I mean, there's definitely reason for hope, especially with the work that you're doing. It seems, and it does seem like a lot of kids with these mental illnesses are willing to be a part of it. I mean, would you agree?
I do.
And I think one of the most interesting points that you make in your TED Talk is that you say people with mental illness will function with the rest of society if they're given the proper treatment and available resources. I'm just interested in what are these specific treatments and resources?
Let me just reiterate though what I said.
Of course.
I asked my co-PI on the high functioning study, Steve Martyr, a famous schizophrenia guy, what percentage of people with schizophrenia are high functioning in our sense, professional, managerial, technical. He said, I don't know, Elyn, the real question is how many could be if we invested the right resources.
Wow.
And that's the right answer. We need to step up and provide resources. And I just have a strong conviction that with appropriate resources, many people can live up to their, quote, pre-morbid potential. I really do believe that. And I think people are done a terrible disservice when they're told to, lower their expectations. I mean, it was suggested to me when I was being interviewed with the end of being readmitted to the Yale Law School by the Department of Psychiatry there. The psychiatrist kind of suggested that maybe I should take 2 or 3 years and be a cashier at a food store. And I thought to myself, I've been a student all my life. I like it. I'm good at it. The hours are flexible. How much more stressful to have a line of people demanding change from me? It's not one size fits all. You got to individualize it to the person herself. And it's a mistake, I think, to say, lower your expectations.
Exactly.
I really think that's a mistake.
Well, helpful words, never to lower your expectations. Elyn, thank you so much
for
coming on today. It really
pleasure.
A pleasure and an honor. For Ms. Elyn Sacs, for myself, Dan Toomey, this has been See You at USC on Friday night. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on Monday.